Hi everyone, welcome to the Orchid Shelf. This is another quick orchid portrait of this gorgeous multifloral Paphiopedilum. Paphiopedilum is a orchid genus that is famous for growing in very different types of environments. So some of these orchids are terrestrial, which means that they grow in a very wet forest, on the forest floor, whereas others are so-called lithophytes, which means that they grow on limestone rocks, or others grow semi-terrestrial or epiphytic, which means that they also grow on trees. So you find quite a lot of different species in different environments. This one is a cross between two species. Let me just take the label for you. I hope you can see that. It's a cross between Paphiopedilum philippinense x chamberlainianum. I'm so happy I was able to pronounce the name correctly because I've got a bit of trouble here. And yeah, to be honest, I wanted to make this video just to show you how beautiful multifloral paphs are. So you've got Paphiopedilum orchids which have got a much shorter flower stalk. I mean, the flower stalks will still be quite high, and then you will just have one flower per fan. So you see the plant grows in a way that it grows a fan, and then once the fan matures, it will produce new offshoots. On this side we have one offshoot, and then on this side we've got a very tiny one. I don't know whether I think there's another one here. Yeah, this one is in between the two, or even another one over here. So maybe 4 offshoots right now. I'm very happy about the way that this plant has been growing for me. And I wanted to do this quick video just to show you that multifloral paphs are actually quite easy to keep, because among some beginners, Paphiopedilum orchids are considered a bit more difficult, sort of the next level of orchid keeping. Whereas I actually do have to say that this Paph, for example, grows much better than some of my phalaenopsis orchids that I have, and are much less finicky. And I think it's this kind of image of Paphiopedilums being difficult is due to a couple of misunderstandings of their care, which I'm going to talk to you about now. So this one is a cross between two species where the leaves are bright green. So you have other types of Paphiopedilums. I just did another video on another phalaenopsis plant, that's why. So you've got some Paphiopedilums which have got mottled leaves, and they typically need lower light levels and higher temperatures, whereas these type of apple green leaved Paphiopedilums like slightly lower temperatures, which still means in the 20s, but slower light, slightly lower temperatures and higher light levels. At my place, they grow under artificial light. I keep them around 10 inches away from Barina T8 lamps. So this one, for example, is a burn spot. It's a really bad sunburn that I subjected the plant to, not under artificial light. So you wouldn't get this burn under artificial lights unless you made it somehow touch the LED and get overheated. But what happened here with the sunburn was that I moved from Germany to Naples here in southern Italy, and thought that the afternoon sun was not too strong, and the plant had been standing in quite low light in Germany, so that was really stupid of me. And what I was really happy about was that even though it got this bad sunburn on the balcony back then, that was 1.5 years ago in another place of mine, it just continued growing. And as you can see, these are all the other growths that happened after the sunburned period, and it's been growing very well for me. Because of my growing space in and outside, I can't really make a differentiation between Cattleya, Phalaenopsis and Paphiopedilum, so you would actually think that Cattleya light levels are way too high for this Paphiopedilum. But to be honest, it's been growing really, really well underneath high light conditions as well. I make sure that there is always air movement, so I have an air purifier which circulates a lot of fresh air around the plants, and I make sure that the plant is continuously moist. By which I mean, don't even think about letting this plant get anywhere near dryness. So what happens when you watch a lot of beginners orchid care videos is that many of those videos recommend letting your orchid go through a dry and wet cycle. So if the plant has been watered, then the media is very moist, and then you have to wait until it gets drier up to, around half of the pot or slightly less. So this is called approaching dryness, and then you're supposed to water it again, just to make sure that the root zone doesn't get waterlogged and the roots don't suffocate because of the lack of oxygen and airiness. But with Paphiopedilums, you just have to do it differently. So you just have to keep them moist all year round. And by moist, I mean like this, so you can see that this sphagnum is still very moist. And I'll just show you the root zone. I keep this, you see there is a bit of water accumulated in the bottom of the pot, which doesn't touch the substrate, so that's absolutely fine. Do you see? I keep this plant in a mixture of ceramus, bark, and lots and lots and lots of perlite. And the reason why I hardly have any sphagnum moss inside the growing media is that I want to keep the plant as long as possible in the media without having to repot it. And the problem with sphagnum moss is that it degrades much faster than other types of media, so that you will have to repot the plant, in a rhythm just above a year maybe. And I don't want to do that because I don't want to disturb the plant too much. Don't be afraid don't be shocked when you see the roots, because Paphiopedilum roots are not grey or green when they're moist, but they are brown. And you see these very well visible little hairs along the roots. And the root tips are actually light in color. So I've been very happy to see that this Paphiopedilum has been growing steadily for me and has been filling the pot with its smiley roots. And as you see, I don't know whether you can see it from the color of the substrate, but it's really moist all the time. And this is how Paphiopedilums want to be kept. So I think the number one thing for Paphiopedilums is moisture. So if you let it get dry, then in the long term, the plant will show it to you much later with a bit of stalled growth and a bit of stunted growth. But like that, it's been growing very well. I keep a top dressing of sphagnum moss because I don't want the new roots to be drying out. So I want them to grow really well into the medium, and the plant has been liking it. In the orchid growing business, people are very often scared of leaving water in between the crown and getting crown into the orchid. But to be fair, I often shower the orchid, or if it's outside on the balcony during summer and autumn, it just gets all sorts of rainfall and I don't particularly, clean off the moisture that is between the crown. But, as long as you have a lot of air movement and you take care of the nutrients that you give to the plant, crown rot is not as likely to happen as you might actually think, because you have to imagine it comes from a very, very wet forest area where it just rains all the time, so the crowns will be wet. So don't worry too much about that. If rot does happen, then it just means that you don't have enough air movement, and otherwise the plant is not doing well because maybe the root zone is getting too soggy, not well oxygenated. And also, now we're going to talk about nutrients. So I fertilize this plant using MSU well water fertilizer because the water in Naples is very calcareous, so there is a lot of limescale in the water, and the pH value is very high. And I lower that pH value down to 5.8, 5.6 if possible, using citric acid. And another advantage of the citric acid is that it will sort of release a bit of calcium from the limescaly water so that it can actually be used by the plant. And this calcium is extremely important for the plant cells to grow healthily, and for the plant matter to become resistant to rot and other issues. So if the plant has a happy calcium uptake and enough magnesium as well, then that will help against any types of rot, and I believe that this is also what happened with my plant. I also give it a bit of algae extract, so kelp extract every now and then, together with the watering. And as I said, I water it. Usually I let it soak for quite a while, once a week, but as soon as it's out on the balcony, behind my 50% shade cloth, it will just take any of the rain that it just gets, and I just leave it there, and it's absolutely happy like that. So I can really recommend it to keep it outside as well, if you have a bit of shading. So mind you, 50% shade cloth, that's actually quite high light because we're in southern Italy, but the plant is still very healthy. So as long as you can give it an opportunity to get used to higher light levels, it will still be fine with higher light levels or lower light levels. So towards autumn, what will emerge is this kind of strange looking, it looks like a new leaf with this reddish tint, and then actually you see a nubbin inside that is very like hairy, and that will grow into this massive flower stalk and will produce this sequence of beautiful, mysterious looking flowers. The flower stalk itself will keep growing as it blooms. So it started off blooming here, and then it just kept producing new flowers, and by the time you've arrived at this length of the flower stalk, the older flowers will have faded already, but it will still keep producing new ones. So the one nuisance that you have is a nice flower presentation, because it gets so high for me and the plant is so big, look at the size comparison, that even underneath my artificial lights, where I left enough space to the top, there is not enough space, so I had to put it somewhere else where the grow light is above my vanda here. So now the flowers keep curving to the right towards the grow light, which is not too pretty if you look at it, but the flowers itself are very beautiful, so that makes up for it. This one used to be a second flower stalk, but I was stupid enough to let it touch the LEDs, so it just had one flower, and the rest of the spike aborted. Oh no, that was the old flower actually, and this is the aborted spike. So what a pity. And as I told you, if you keep it adequately moist, have a bit of air movement, and don't put it under too low light, then the plant will grow really nicely for you, and it will bloom very reliably. So this time I have 2 spikes. Last time I had 2 spikes, and there is an older one that I never saw. I think it bloomed at the plant nursery. I got this plant from Hennis Orchids in Germany, I believe. But one thing I really wanted to mention is that this plant does not grow slowly. So Paphiopedilum orchids are famous for being for growing slowly, and this is absolutely not what I can confirm with this type of orchid. It just grows even faster than my Phalaenopsis schilleriana. So this amount of growth you see not even in half a year, and maybe it's because it's an older plant which is well established already that it can grow that much. But I've been quite surprised about the growth speed. It used to be much smaller in the past. Yeah, I didn't expect that because I actually like slow growing orchids because I can control the growth space a bit better, but this one is really, getting out of hand. But I love it nonetheless because it's been growing so vigorous. So that's me on multifloral paths. Maybe I can't generalize it onto other multifloral paths, but I've had a very good experience with this type of plant, and they grow so vigorously. They're so easy to keep. My temperatures in my room are not even that high, so at the moment I maybe have 20 degrees Celsius, but it's still very happy. It's also happy with very high summer temperatures of more than 35 degrees, as long as it's staying very wet and very moist. Just make sure that you don't let the moist substrate just stay wet and then you don't re-water it. So what I mean by that is some people want to wait until the very end so that the substrate in their eyes can dry out a bit on the surface and breathe. But the problem is then that a better way to get the substrate re-oxygenated is, in my view, just to give it fresh water, because water has oxygen too, and it will freshen up the substrate as well. So just flush it regularly, don't just soak it, and then the plant will stay happy. Okay, so much to my ramble. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thumbs up if you liked it. Feel free to subscribe, and I really hope I could motivate you for your own multifloral path growing if you have the space. All right, happy orchid growing. Bye.